Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY! A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Well, welcome aboard. Hello, everybody. How you doing on this Wednesday, September 6th? Welcome into Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you from high atop the 18th fairway here at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Of course, powered by Andy Moore Honda. Make sure you go to AndyMooreHonda.com to get more to your door. And the family of restaurants in and around the Bedford and Bloomington areas of the Wow Food Group. Great places like Hank's Pizza Mac, where you can get pizza, Mac Bowls, Tot Bowls, and the official McKenzie Holmes Bowl coming soon. Talk about a Mac Bowl. There's the ultimate ones. Hey, man, we've got a loaded show today on this Wednesday. Don Fischer will be joining us. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star. And the Hall of Famer Rick Bozich as well. So it is loaded. And I see that the great peeps are lining up, and you can do so too on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. If you're not able to listen on any of the great radio stations that we're on, like the Ref 97.7 ESPN, the Ref down in Evansville, or 1230 AM 104.7 FM WJOB, the voice of the region, WJOB, up in Hammond and Chicago. Hello to everybody up there. 1380 The Fan in Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne's sports station. Make sure you stay tuned after today's show for Brett Rump there. And baseball. They got tons of baseball coming up. Hello to everybody. How are you doing? It is a lot on the slate today. Let's see. The Mountain West is talking to Wazoo and Oregon State, of course. That is no surprise. USA hit 17 threes yesterday in Tyrese Halliburton had 6 of those. You've got a new member of the college football playoff committee as Jennifer Cohen moved from Washington to USC, but she's decided to focus on her duties with USC as athletics director, stepping down, and then Utah's athletic director get that spot. I'm like, ooh, wow, Big Ten loses to somebody on that poll or on that panel. I'm wondering how much that has an effect. Puma is adding a 4th shoe company on the circuit, AAU circuit. You've already got Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour circuits, of course. Now you're going to have the Puma AAU circuit. So a 4th one out there going up and running. AP polls out. New AP football poll. And hello to everybody on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Like I said, Fred checking in as always from Easton, Pennsylvania. Kent from Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Dog-faced pony soldier. Caleb right in downtown Indy, baby. Austin, appreciate you Caleb, appreciate you jumping on. Yeah, pointing out Austin Schwartz committed to the U. Mike, how are you, sir? Justin as well. Bill from up in the rainy UP. Yeah, we had some rain, a little bit of rain yesterday. Sean, how are you, sir? Pointing out that the Ohio State defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, was laughing at their press conference about practicing for the IU offense with a quote, "I think we practiced it 5 plays or less, and that's stretching it." Wow. I'll bring that up to Don Fischer. Hey, Justin, how are you? Appreciate you, sir. 5 lefts. Kevin from Monroeville, Indiana. Dwayne is on as well. Larry. Pete is back. Speaking of Pete, college football picks, week 2 for ISB. Don't forget to go to ESPN's site. Then you go to the fantasy tab, go down into groups. You can do it anytime. We'll do it weekly. There was a tie this week, so we're going to carry that over to next week and see who does better. But it wasn't me. I'm in a tie for third, I guess you'd say. Purdue. They got us. But lots to talk about, like I said. How are you doing? This college football AP poll out. Interesting, of course, because Colorado. Georgia's at the top, which I don't know that Georgia's the best team. I don't know that we're going to find out that they're the best team because their schedule is just flimsy. Michigan, I am very intrigued by Michigan this year because now Michigan's number 2. I'll just go down through the poll. Alabama, number 3. Florida State jumps into number 4 with 3 first-place votes, and I think that's the first those are the first place votes they've had in several years. The Ohio State Buckeyes are at number 5. You got to be kidding me. Did these people not watch the same game that I watched? What in that game showed you that was the number 5 team in the country? That's what aggravates me. They dropped 2 spots. They look like they did not look like a top 25 team to me. And yet they dropped 2 spots. Whatever. They're ranked right in front of USC at number 6. Penn State's number 7. Yes, sir, John?
Well, I was going to say what you're saying about Ohio State. I really wish that for all college sports, with the way they handle the polls, wouldn't it be great if they didn't have a preseason poll to base their
preseason polls
week
are
one
stupid,
decisions off of?
stupid. I've always
Imagine
said that.
if you
It's
weren't
a
allowed
joke.
to rank the teams until after week 1 results.
You know,
You'd have a way different looking top 25.
Good point, and I've talked about that before. Not just me, but everybody. Preseason polls are bull hockey. They're just something to talk about, but it screws it up. It does. It puts a false sense. They're assuming Georgia's the number 1 team. They haven't been tested. Did you assume that TCU was going to wipe Colorado from the face of the earth? They didn't. Ohio State looked mere mortals, and this is the top thing.
If you didn't have a preseason poll, you'd probably have Florida State at the number 1 spot after week 1. You'd probably have Colorado up there fairly high. And, fill in the rest however you please. But also one other, I know you're going through the poll right now, but what are your thoughts on Clemson still being number 25 after losing to Duke?
Oh, that doesn't bother me. I'll tell you
good.
what, Clemson looked a hell of a lot better to me than Ohio State. They just lost the game.
Even though they only scored 7 points?
Yeah, but they were inside the 10 twice and came away with nothing. Fluke stuff. That was they were first and goal from the 1 twice and came away with no points. So
you can honestly say the same thing about Ohio State then. I mean, Indiana had at least 2 goal line stands.
But this was fluky. They turned the ball over. It was fluky.
I got
to me it was just fluky, and Clemson's going to be a better football team than Ohio State, I think. It's all subjective. Ohio State showed me very, very little. They're being ranked because it's Ohio State number 1, the Big Ten, and this receiving core that doesn't really have Indiana
held Marvin Harrison Jr. to what, just two or three receptions?
I don't know.
18 yards, something like that?
Yes, and I don't know if that's more about the quarterback, what that is. It's hard to tell, but I do not believe that Ohio State is a top 5 team by any stretch of the imagination. But that's my opinion. USC number 6, Penn State number 7. So right now, not the Big Ten. The Big Ten East has 3 teams in the top 7, all of which are on Indiana's schedule. Thank you very much. Right now, Indiana, 3 top 7 teams on their schedule.
You also have Wisconsin on your schedule, who's number 19 currently.
There you go. But 3 in the top 7. Ouch. Who else has that schedule? Maryland.
Maryland and Rutgers.
Maryland and Rutgers. Maryland and Rutgers. Yeah, what a murderer's row. Washington, the Huskies, number 8 with Michael Penix Jr. Great weekend for him. Great quarter second. I think he threw for another 400. He had a big game. Let's see. Tennessee, Notre Dame, rounding out the top 10. Then it's Texas, Utah. Utah, they looked a lot better than they looked good. They used a second and third string quarterback and beat the crap out of an SEC school. But they're all the way down to 12 because their name's not OSU. Huh. If Ohio State had played Utah, they'd have got their ass beat. But yet Utah is not nearly as good as Ohio State, according to the AP. Oregon, number 13, followed by LSU, Kansas State, Oregon State, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, number 19, as John pointed out. Ole Miss. Duke jumps in at number 21 after that big-time upset. Colorado is only number 22 after what they did. So if you're comparing how teams looked to you, that what you just watched this past weekend, I watched the offense of Colorado. I just watched that game again last night. I don't know what Ohio State would do with that offense. But yet they're that far apart? No. That's a joke to me. So that's that. I can complain about it all I want, but that's how it goes.
Break.
We've got to take a break already. That didn't take long. Up next, the voice, Don Fischer. We'll be back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
I do think one thing they usually do, and this is more so, I guess, during the conference play portion of the season. Normally, they don't drop SEC teams very far when they lose. When LSU lost, they dropped them 9 spots. So props to the poll for doing that.
Well, they should have. Florida State just beat the crap
Ransacked
out of
them. Your beloved ACC has 4 teams in the top 25 right now.
College football is wacky right now.
It really is. I think that plays in Indiana's favor. Hopefully. We'll see. I'm not saying they're going to upset one of the three beasts of the East, but every other game might be winnable.
Everybody's talking about Clemson. To me, Clemson looked better than Ohio State. They lost the game because there are these fluky things that happened.
Well, maybe the other argument for Ohio State is maybe Indiana's good. You don't know yet. That's kind of maybe the argument.
Well, their defense, Indiana's defense is good.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I'm still worried about the secondary. But offensively,
we'll see this Friday. Whenever they play somebody that they should beat up on, if they can have their way with Indiana State, then we'll know if this offense can do anything.
Well, if they don't have, they have to have their way with Indiana State. Indiana State's an FCS school, and
absolutely. Good morning, Mr. Fisher.
Hi guys, how are you?
Good, sir. How are you doing, brother?
I'm all right. Can't complain.
I'll listen.
All right, guys, 30 seconds.
Up at Eagle Point, and they have a sweet deal for all returning students, no matter where you go to school. At the golf club at Eagle Point, students can play for the rest of 2023 for just $299. That's right, play as many rounds as you like for just $299. That's better than a birdie. But you don't have to be a student to play at Eagle Point. Go online to set your tee time or call 812-824-4040. The golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this Wednesday, September 6th. Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, brought to you by the Chop Shop, where tonight you will find our next guest, Don Fischer, with Tom Allen for Inside Indiana Football. Don, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Jim. How about yourself?
Good. Coming off the first weekend for most teams, including Indiana, a game in which it was surprisingly closer than most of us expected it to be. A great performance by the defense, as all of us have been talking about since then. Of course, the offense was a great disappointment. Same thing, that conversation's been going on. So we move forward from there as they will take on an Indiana State team this week that should allow them to pretty much do whatever they want. But revisiting last week, I'd be lament if I didn't. Man, those are the games that Indiana could have actually won if they had a better than average offense. And that's all it would have taken with as well as the defense played, but it wasn't to be.
Well, I agree that the defense really played well. I do think that Ohio State is not where it's going to be as the season rolls on with their quarterback situation. Kyle McCord was getting his first opportunity to be a major factor, and Devin Brown we thought was going to play a little bit more than he did. They didn't quite go with the two scenarios like Indiana did with splitting almost equal time on the field. But I don't think Ohio State offensively is where they will be at the end of the season. I think they're a much better offensive team than they are. That's not to say that Indiana's defense didn't have a lot to do with what Ohio State was able to do in the game offensively. I don't want to take anything away from the defense. To have that many new faces on the field on the defensive side of the football, very impressive to have those guys play like they did. The new guys, Andre Carter was terrific. Jacob Mangum-Farrar was terrific. There's no doubt that the defensive backfield, which was probably the biggest question mark that everybody had going into the first ball game, I thought they played well. There were mistakes made, but not all that many. And without question, they kept Indiana in the ball game. It was strictly the offensive side of the football that didn't get its job done. But again, part of that was due to the fact that the play calling was just so conservative Wasn't very imaginative in any way. I am still befuddled in many respects to understand the running back situation. I think I just don't understand why Josh Henderson doesn't get more ops. That guy inside the tackles. Yeah, I mean, inside the tackles, the guy is really tough. And even when he, if he gets out in the open, he makes people miss as well. And not just miss, but he runs through people. That part of it is a little befuddling to me. But at the same time, I know the conservative part of it was to keep these quarterbacks so they weren't making a bunch of mistakes, try to keep Indiana in the ball game, because if you start making a bunch of mistakes, that's going to be a problem too. But at the same time, you get into the late in the third quarter or the fourth quarter, you've got a chance. And that's when you have to really open up the offense, try to do something. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But to play that conservative, in my opinion, was a mistake. And I think Walt Bell has admitted that, and so is Tom Allen.
Absolutely. I don't understand why, because it just appears that you're just trying to live through the situation with that. But I've been talking about Josh and Christian Turner, both two guys, great running backs. Those are guys that should be getting the ball up the middle. But yet 4 times, I did this yesterday, it's either 4 or 5 times Jalen Lucas runs the ball up the middle. And I'm sorry, but he's 170 pounds, and that ain't going to happen, especially in the Big Ten. I don't know why they would try to do that. He is a guy that I understand needs to have the ball in his hands, but it's got to be out in space. They have got to figure out a way to have him get the ball out in space. And why they were not working on that, I don't understand. Why there weren't short passes thrown, a lot more of those, I don't know, because that would have worked. I'm not expecting them to go deep all day because they're not that far into the season, but it would have just been really easy. Roll your quarterback out if you're worried. Roll him out, quick passes again. It just, I'm where you are. I don't understand. No one does, and it really makes me start to wonder about Indiana as an offense going forward. Not that they don't have the talent, but the thinking behind what they're doing.
I mean, 153 yards is just not good enough. And we saw, think about last year, the offense couldn't hardly do anything most of the season. It was a very disturbing factor with this football team. And we just kind of saw more of what we saw last year in this game against Ohio State. Now, granted, Ohio State's a really good football team and their defense is really good. We get all that kind of thing, but the way that you have to do something different, and you've got to do something that tricks people every now and then. That's the one thing that we didn't see on Saturday. There wasn't any of that type of a play for the most part. I still think running the option is not a bad scenario with this group of quarterbacks, the young quarterbacks. They both have good legs. They both can run the football. I know you don't want to get anybody hurt because you're not very deep after you get past those two. You really don't know what you have because we haven't seen any of what they have behind that. Of course, Brock Lowry's a true freshman, so you don't want to throw him in that situation, although they did that to Sorsby last year in the Penn State game. But that said, I do understand part of it. I'm not going to sit here and just rail on Walt Bell and Tom Allen in regard to the offensive side of the football. This week should tell a different story, and if it does, I think it'll calm nerves, so to speak.
Yeah, Indiana State obviously I think was 22 or 27-0. They lost to Eastern Illinois, so things not going well for Indiana State, the Sycamores, and probably good for Indiana right now to let them have a much easier path to see what they have. And so we'll find out and we'll see what and obviously they're not going to show a lot offensively early on. They probably went into the game thinking, I can't imagine you go into a game thinking you're going to lose, but not wanting to show a lot. It was a fine line of how far are we going to compete? How much are we going to show? What do they have to show? There probably won't show a lot more this week, but you'll probably see a little more passing, I'm assuming.
Well, I would think so. Last week, I think Jackson threw it 5 times and Sorsby 16. So
And most of that came toward the end.
Right. So, saw 21 passes in the ball game. Jackson, I think, just converted one reception.
1 of 5.
Out of his 5 tries, 8 of 16 for Sorsby. So, but again, we're not seeing this offense unleashed at this point, which I think is what we'll see in this Indiana State game. Not that they're going to show a great deal of they're going to try and do, I think, the things that you would normally expect a football team in its first or second ball game to do. That said, we should get a better feel for what Indiana has. And from Indiana State's perspective, they played poorly against Eastern Illinois, but they had all kinds of injury problems for their first game. Their quarterback, Cade Chambers, did not play. He's not expected to play in this ball game against Indiana. So they've got 2 guys back there that had a bit of a problem last week, turning the ball over. I think both of them had 2 interceptions each, Elias and Screws. And then they also had 2 fumbles. They had 6 turnovers in that ball game. Kurt Mallory couldn't have been happy about that. And Kurt Mallory's a good football coach. And his 7th year, I guess, at Indiana State. Of course, they didn't have a season in 2020. They didn't get to play a single game. But his record there, even though it's not great, you can see that they've made progress. I just think that this particular team, with the injuries that they've got, they're kind of fighting with one arm tied behind their back right now, and that's a concern from their perspective. But Indiana's got to play really well in this ball game coming up on Saturday, in my opinion.
Well, it was absolutely. And the quarterback situation last week, we had Brendan Sorsby start, and Taven Jackson played equally. This week, it'll be Taven Jackson starting, Brendan Sorsby playing as well. But from the quarterback situation, I said prior to that I thought Sorsby was going to get the start, and I have not changed from that. I think that not he's not going to get the start this week, obviously, because they've already announced that it's Taven Jackson. But going forward, I think that Brendan Sorsby ends up getting the start. I think I saw, especially once he started to get more comfortable, he seemed to be more comfortable in the throwing game, which is why he ended up throwing it 16 times. But between those two, I think that and Jackson's a great athlete. So I wonder if Sorsby does win the job, what are they going to do with Jackson? He's not, I can't imagine him just sitting there. But that's just my prognostication.
Well, I don't have any idea what they're going to do either at this point. One of them's going to have to sit if we're going to have one quarterback. It's that simple. And that's not going to fare well for either one. They're both going to be upset about it, but that's the way it is in college football today. Somebody's going to win the spot, and here's the other thing. They can't afford an injury to either one at this point. Because that just forces the situation. So you still want to have that option to go to the other guy if you have to and need to. So right now, that's, in my opinion, that's the biggest concern. You do not want to have an injury at quarterback this early in the season in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. Running the ball, there we had questions we talked about earlier, but the line itself definitely seemed to be improved. They didn't really put him in too much of a stressful situation, but they seemed to get past the test, I guess you'd say, because they were playing Ohio State. They weren't playing just anybody else to start opener.
Yeah, there's no question in my mind. The offensive line looked better. I do think that they looked better in this ball game than we saw last year at any point in time. But it wasn't groundbreaking. It wasn't anything like they were spectacular. But again, that was part of the offensive game plan. They didn't open a bunch of holes for big runs or anything like that, which, against Ohio State, that's a tough thing to do because their defensive line is really good. And their linebackers are really good. So the run game was probably not what you were going to see accentuated in the game against Ohio State. That said, why didn't they throw it more? Why didn't Indiana throw it more? Again, all of this boils down to the play calling, the conservative vent that the Hoosier offense was in, and hopefully that all changes this week.
Absolutely. Going forward, well, how was the first game back in the booth for the season?
I was awful. I didn't do a very good job.
I know that's not good. I know that's not true.
Well, I couldn't tell Christian Turner from Josh Henderson out there because that the numbers are scrunched up a little bit. You just can't really tell unless you're really looking closely. So my spotter's going to have to do a much better job. I'll blame it on him.
Well, let me tell you, you are quite a ways away from there. And for people to know, the booth he sits in, the windows are all open. So if it's hot outside, it's hot inside.
Yeah.
So you felt the same heat that the fans were feeling, especially those students that left as soon as the halftime rolled around of a hell of a good game, which I don't understand again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to make sure that they know you're not sitting up in some cushy layer.
No. Well, here's the thing. Yes, it's not a cushy layer. However, the windows being open and not sitting in the west stands where the sun is beating down on you, we still have a little shade above us, and there's not a problem with the sun just beating down. But it was hot. It was humid. It was a very, very warm day, and I understand to some degree why people would walk out. I don't understand why they do it at halftime when the score was 10-3. That's always been the issue at Indiana, though. Student body is not going to hang around unless they think they've got a chance to win. That's about the only way that they hang around. And even then, lots of times they don't hang around. So that hasn't changed. I don't know how you change that tradition. And it's become a tradition.
It absolutely has. What are your expectations coming up for this week?
I just think I think Indiana has got to open up the offenses. I think everybody expects that to happen a little bit. I think we're going to get a better feel for these two players at the quarterback position. I think they're both going to get an opportunity in this game like they did in the first contest. I want to see if the offensive line can really make hay in this ball game for the run game. I think that's going to be a big factor in this contest. Because I think they're going to try and run the football. I do think that that's part of the plan this year, to run the football more effectively than they have in the past, which I think has to happen if this is going to be a good football team. And then I want to see what the defense does, because Eastern Illinois shut out Indiana State. That should make Indiana's ball club feel like there's a little pressure there to do the same thing.
Yeah, I was thinking that very thing. And the defense, again, how surprisingly well that Jeffrey the Greek comes on, a friend of ours that comes on Fridays. He calls it the land of misfit toys because of all the different faces. And it's accurate. But boy, did they come together. And Coach Guerreri, he should be commended for how well that defense played in their first game against a top-level opponent, no less.
That's exactly right. I mean, the defense I think that they stole the day from an Indiana perspective. Everybody was excited about what they were seeing from these guys. Aaron Casey was phenomenal, played his best game as an Indiana Hoosier, and I congratulate him all the time on just how he has progressed in his career at Indiana. From in 6 years' time, and granted, that's a long time to be out there, but he's been a factor every year that he's played. And he's just gotten better, and it's steady progress. It's not been spectacular progress in his case, but the steady progress has elevated him into a really good football player at Indiana. And we were all concerned about Cam Jones not being back and not such a great player that he was at Indiana last year, and they lost him through injury about halfway through the season. And Aaron Casey stepped up last year and played really well with Cam not in there. And then we saw him on Saturday look the best that he's ever looked on the football field. So I think that's a big factor. And, of course, I think the defensive backfield still has to make progress. They've got to get better. But I thought they did a heck of a job against one of the best receiving corps in the country on Saturday against Ohio State.
Absolutely. Make sure you catch Don tonight at Chop Shop for Inside Indiana Football with Coach Tom Allen. Tonight, 7 o'clock, 7:05. We'll see you there, Don.
Yep, looking forward to it. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you very much. Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're back with Dylan Sinn of the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Good morning, Dylan.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Good. You're pretty quiet on my end. Let me see if I can turn you up a little bit. All right.
Better
give me
now?
something here. You okay?
Better
Yeah,
now?
I think that's better. Yep, that's better.
Yeah, I turned up my microphone. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine. So you were at Purdue this past weekend, right?
I was, yes. It was fun.
Purdue. I know a lot of people are upset. At least Purdue fans are upset, but I think Fresno State's a decent team, probably.
They are, but Purdue shouldn't have gotten outplayed by as much as they did. Losing is not the worst thing. Getting outplayed thoroughly like they did is a problem, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to talk about Notre Dame, etc.
Where are you going to be this weekend?
I nowhere, honestly. I'm covering high school football on Friday, and Purdue and Notre Dame are on the road. So I will be probably in Dayton for the Tin Caps. That's the last two games of the regular season, and they're within a game of a playoff spot. So
Okay, cool.
I'm probably going to be there. Yeah, it's one of those weird. There's usually maybe 1 week every fall where none of the three teams that we cover are in town, and usually those weeks I go cover Ball State, but Ball State is also on the road this week. So
and plus Indiana's playing on a Friday, which you're covering high school on Friday.
Right, exactly. So I would go to, like, if IU Indiana State was on Saturday, I would go to that. But it's on Friday, and we have high school football to cover. So
is your hierarchy Notre Dame, Purdue, and then Indiana for football?
No, it's the best game.
Okay.
Like, it's just whatever game we think is the best of the week, depending on how good the teams are that week and the opponents they're playing. I covered, I can't remember who Notre Dame was playing that week. I think it was Pitt, maybe, like Notre Dame Pitt in 2020. I went to IU Ohio State instead, like that kind of thing, right? Like, and Pitt was a good team that year, but it was you want to go to IU Ohio State because IU was 4-0 and that kind of thing. So it depends on how good the teams are. And that's why I covered Purdue this past weekend rather than Notre Dame, Tennessee State, right? Now, Notre Dame is usually going to get priority because generally they're the best of the three teams and they have the biggest games. But yeah, on this past week, obviously, Notre Dame was third on our list. We were deciding between whether to go to IU or whether to go to Purdue.
I got you. All right, 15 seconds, guys. Jimbo, I'm sure you're nearby, but here we go. For total event package, you can trust that you're making the right choice with Garnish Catering. Visit garnishcatering.com. That's garnishcatering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of Wow Food Group. This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday, September 6th. Jim Coyle with you as always. Here, brought to you by RE/MAX. Cheryl Sizemore, if you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, reach out to Cheryl. Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. Joined now by Dylan Sinn of the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. How's it going, brother?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on, as always, Jim.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you, friend. How was your busy weekend? I know Purdue and Notre Dame both playing. Notre Dame played the day before, but Purdue on Saturday. I got to tell you, man, in our ISB radio college pick'ems that we do, Purdue screwed me up. They screwed me up. I had them picked to win, although Fresno State, man, they still may have some of the Kalen DeBoer leftover magic there because, wow, to go on the road and do what they did, that was a little impressive.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, not even just Kalen DeBoer. Their coach, Jeff Tedford, he's been there for 4 years. 2 before Kalen DeBoer and 2 after. This is his 5th year. In those 4 seasons, he's won 10 games 3 times. He's probably going to do it again this year. They lost their quarterback from last year, Jake Hayner, who was a star for them for many, many years. He's in the NFL now, but they brought in Mikey Keene, the transfer from UCF, who was just outstanding against Purdue. He was really, really good. And so losing to Fresno State is, and I've been telling people this, losing to Fresno State is not the biggest deal in the world. I wouldn't have thought less of Purdue if they had lost to Fresno State. I do think less of Purdue because they got physically dominated by Fresno State. Like, Purdue had an 84-yard touchdown in the 3rd play from scrimmage, and they had a kick return touchdown. And outside of that, Fresno State was the better down-to-down team by a wide margin. And I think that is going to be the issue for Purdue going forward is, can you figure out the back end of this defense? Because Fresno State gained 487 yards in that game, and Purdue could not stop the passing game unless Dylan Thieneman, the true freshman safety from Westfield, was making some kind of spectacular play. He's awesome, but their cornerbacks are really rough right now. And so until you get that figured out, you're not going to be able to play the kind of aggressive defense that Ryan Walters wants, because that defense is predicated on one-on-one matchups and getting these guys in space and letting them win. And that's why Illinois was so good last year, because they had the guys in the back end who could win almost every play. They had 3 guys from that secondary at Illinois last year drafted in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. Purdue doesn't have those guys. Dylan Thieneman is probably going to play in the NFL someday, and he's probably going to be a mid-round draft pick at some point. But beyond that, it's rough at corner right now. So that needs to be cleaned up.
Well, while they don't have a Big Ten East schedule, I still, as looking at their schedule,
it's not easy. It's not easy.
I do not see them making a bowl game now, just because of losing that non-con game.
I don't either.
It's the same thing I will say about Indiana if they lose to Louisville. If they lose to Louisville, this is the same thing for me. If Indiana, when they play Louisville, if they lose that game, I will not see a path to a bowl game for Indiana. Right now, I don't see a path to a bowl game for Purdue. While they might beat Syracuse, which is next up on their slate. Wisconsin,
Virginia Tech is next up first.
My bad. Yes, they have to go to Virginia Tech, which that should. Well, I was expecting that to be a win for Purdue.
I don't know. Basically Vegas has installed it as a pick'em, so it's unclear.
If they lose that game, they're in serious trouble for the season.
I think if you lose that game, you're probably looking at 4-8 or somewhere in that realm.
If they lose that game, I don't know that they win 3 games because
the thing is, we don't know how good Virginia Tech is, right? Like Virginia Tech was straight up bad last season. They were really, really bad in the first year under Coach Brent Pry. But they beat Old Dominion by 2 touchdowns last week. Old Dominion's not a terrible team. I think that's a decent win for Virginia Tech, and they have it at home. I think if you lose to Virginia Tech, there's still wins on the schedule with obviously Northwestern. You can beat Syracuse. You can beat Nebraska. Minnesota looks beatable with that new offense that they have that really struggled. There are some gettable games on this schedule. I think Illinois is obviously beatable with how much they lost and almost losing to Toledo over the weekend. So there are wins on the schedule. I just don't think there's enough to get to a bowl game now, because you'd have to win basically every winnable game from here on out and probably steal one. And that's not outside the realm of possibility. I think that Ryan Walters is a very smart guy and will get this defense to a better place pretty quickly. I don't think he'll get it to a place where it's good in time, would be my guess.
I can say one thing. I'm already predicting what I see could be a very, very evenly matched bucket game at the end of this season, because both teams kind of seem to be in a similar place, so to speak, with where they are. Up next for Purdue, of course, like you said, Virginia Tech. And then that game is followed by Syracuse, and then they get into Big Ten play. But Purdue has Ohio State and Michigan on their schedule. So they have a couple of the big boys from the Big Ten East side in this last season. So that's going to make things difficult. But they do have games against Northwestern. You've got game against Nebraska. And that's Illinois. And Illinois, did they lose their opener?
They beat Toledo On a
Barely.
last-second field goal. Yeah. Now, again, Toledo is the same type of team as Fresno State, where there's no shame in losing that game. But again, Illinois was outplayed in that game. Illinois should have lost that game. They got pretty lucky. They got a pick six that really kind of broke Toledo's back a little bit. And then their quarterback, Luke Altmaier, transfer from Ole Miss, made just an absolutely spectacular throw down the right sideline at the end of the game to get them in field goal range where he was getting absolutely creamed as he released the ball. I don't think that is replicable. I don't think Luke Altmaier is going to make that throw very often. So Illinois has some issues to work on as well. And to be clear, they were always going to, losing not only Ryan Walters, obviously, but a ton of defensive talent. More talent than is sustainable to lose at a program like Illinois, even though they've recruited much better in recent years.
Notre Dame also getting their season started, albeit against the Navy.
They played Navy and they played Tennessee State on Saturday, the first FCS game in program history.
Why would they even schedule an FC? As proud as they are and as aggressively as they schedule, I am shocked, beyond shocked, that they played an FCS team. Because they wanted
to save so if you play week 0, which they did against Navy, the rule is you get 2 bye weeks during the season, and they wanted to save those for later in the year when they could like rest up and be fresh for the end of the season. So they wanted to schedule a game for the week after Navy, but that game was
that they could rest up.
So basically, yes. So yes. Because they're coming back from Ireland, you're going to be jet lagged. You're not going to get a full practice in until Thursday. Basically, like they said, they practiced Wednesday and they said it went well, but you're not going to get a full practice in until Thursday. And so you schedule a team that you know you can beat in that slot, right? And I think that's basically what happened. And they had the opportunity to schedule an HBCU, which is huge for them too. I think Marcus Freeman wanted to do that. He knows Eddie George, who is the coach of Tennessee State. He knows him personally. They're both Ohio State guys, obviously. So they wanted to have that opportunity. They paid Tennessee. Tennessee State doesn't have a lot of athletic funding. And so Notre Dame gave them a pretty big check, unclear how much because Notre Dame's private, but they gave them a pretty big check to show up. And you get a game before you go play on the road for the first time against NC State this week. I think it worked out pretty well for them.
Absolutely. Now up this week for Notre Dame, what do they have?
Yeah, they have they go to Raleigh. No, they go to Raleigh to face NC State. It's not going to be an easy one. I'll tell you that. NC State they lose, obviously, Devin Leary from last year's team, but they bring in Brennan Armstrong from Virginia. They're good. I don't know if they're great. I think they're fine. I think they're probably 30th-ish around there, which going on the road is a tough test, right? Like that's a good test for Notre Dame as they get ready to play Ohio State in September. I don't think it's a guaranteed win by any means. I think the defense has some things to figure out in terms of defending quarterbacks who can move. And Brennan Armstrong can certainly do that. I think he's going to come in and try to be the most physical player on the field. And it's going to be up to Notre Dame to make sure that he is not that they match his physicality. And they have the players on defense to do it. It's just a question of going out there and playing with that mentality. So I think it's a really interesting test for Notre Dame. They've passed the first two in flying colors, right? Yes, they were always going to win those games, but they've done the things you would have wanted them to do in those games. Like they're averaging 8.3 yards a play to 2.9 for their opponents. Their opponents aren't any good, but you play the people in front of you, Notre Dame is dominated. So now you say, all right, we're going to play someone with a pulse. Let's go out and do it. Let's go out and show that we're the team that we looked like in the first couple of weeks.
Looking at the Notre Dame schedule, there are 3 games that jump out, but the one that jumps out more than the other 2, the Duke Blue Devils.
That's right. Right after the week after Ohio State. On the road.
In Durham.
Yes.
Notre Dame has to play Ohio State on September 23rd. Then they have to travel to Durham, North Carolina to take on a Duke team that just upset and shocked the world with beating Clemson. And then the week after that game, they have to host the USC Trojans, which is expected to be a very formidable team. Ohio State, I'm not sold on them after watching the Indiana game. But it's still a tough That's a 3-game stretch, man, and that Duke game is what you call a trap game.
Yes.
In the parlance.
I don't think it's a trap game anymore. I think it is just a game now. Like after seeing what Duke did to Clemson, I don't think there's any chance Notre Dame takes them lightly. I do think there's a chance they straight up lose to them. Like I think that Duke just might be better. Duke is very, very good, and they are very, very physical, and they will take you and break your spirit if you let them. Notre Dame coming off that game against Ohio State, which you might be down on Ohio State after seeing them against Indiana. I am not. Ohio State will figure it out. They're going to go 11-1 at worst. And
really, you think they beat Penn State or Michigan? One of the two.
I think they beat Notre Dame and Penn State or Michigan. One of the two. Yes. Ohio State is never not fine on offense, and their defense looks very, very good. If the offense is what you're concerned about with Ohio State, don't be. They will figure it out, and they will be good. They might not be quite as elite as they were last year because Kyle McCord is not C.J. Stroud, but Kyle McCord is fine, and he has the receivers to make him look more than fine, and that defense looks absolutely legit. Ohio State will go 11-1 at worst. I don't think they're going to lose Notre Dame. I like, to be clear, I like what Notre Dame has done this year. I think Notre Dame is a good team that's probably going to go 9-3, which against this schedule would be a very impressive finish. But I do think that Ohio State is still a very good team, and will be just fine. Because Ohio State,
I wonder how much they probably held a lot back.
They probably held a lot back. Yes, they do. The thing I will say about Ohio State that should concern them when they play teams like Notre Dame and Penn State and Michigan, that offensive line needs some work. That offensive line has new starters, and it looked like it was not cohesive against Indiana. Tom Allen, and I've said this for years, the thing that Tom Allen is best at as a coach is dialing up pressures that are going to confuse offensive lines and get his guys into the backfield. They did that against Ohio State, and Ohio State did not have answers for it for a lot of the night. So that is something that Ohio State's going to need to figure out, because Michigan and Penn State are going to make their lives miserable if they don't.
I don't think the Duke game will be. I think it will. They looked like a good team. I don't know that they were really better than Clemson. Clemson really shot themselves in the foot, man.
They absolutely did. They absolutely did.
I talked earlier, 3 trips inside the 10, 2 first and goals from the 1, 0 points.
Yes.
That's just a fluke that just isn't going to happen. I think I heard Jim or Dabo say that there were some stats that they were 108-0, and it happened in that game. They're now 108-1.
Yes.
But what's coming up next for you, brother?
Yeah, I mean, I am this entire week. I'm covering Tin Caps baseball, which is there are 5 games left in the regular season. The Tin Caps are a half game up in the playoff race. They have not made the playoffs since 2017. They have 5 games left, so it's really exciting this week as they try to end that streak. So I'll be covering that the entire week, and then obviously high school football on Friday. I will be at a game as well.
Yeah, lots of big games up there in the Fort Wayne area, and Fort Wayne really supporting those Tin Caps, man. Hope that they make the run.
That's right.
Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Thanks, brother. Look forward to it again next week.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me on.
You betcha. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Up next, Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star will get you caught up on what is happening around the state in high school football, as this is coming up to week 4, I think. We'll figure that all out and more. Back right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. Holy macaroni. Holy macaroni.
All right. 30 seconds. Kyle should be on here shortly.
New home with Property Shore Construction, now building exclusively south of Bloomington within the Stonecrest Golf community. Choose from one of the gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Revesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday, September 6th. Hope that you are having a good day. It's a great week. I love the 3-day weekend. It's the gift that keeps giving, because then it turns into a 4-day week. And then now we've got a football game on Friday night. So that kind of shortens it and gives you another little weekend. So there's that. Yeah, how about, let's see, we're back. Someone said I loved it. Robert, drinking the Colorado Kool-Aid. Boy, I wish we could play that song. You talk about a funny one. There's a song called Colorado Kool-Aid by, daggone it, can't think of his name. Take his job and shove it. Sing, take it, Johnny Paycheck. Oh my gosh, give that song a listen. It's just kind of funny. But high school football coming up. They're well into play, as I think they're in week 3. Fisher's on the rise. At the power rankings, Kyle still has Center Grove at the top, after a 27-point third quarter sparked Center Grove to a 34-7 victory over Louisville Trinity, who has won more state championships in Kentucky than any other school. That's a huge win. And I believe, was that on the road? Their quarterback, Tyler Cherry, was 13 of 17 passing for 280 yards, 3 touchdowns. Noah Coy caught 7 passes for 143 yards. So Center Grove, they have oh my God. Who do they play this week? I just love to see who they're playing. A little team called Cincinnati Moeller.
And speaking of I know you mentioned this yesterday, and you'll probably want to ask Kyle about this when he comes on, but isn't Ben Davis facing Montverde Academy this week?
No, IMG.
IMG Academy, excuse me.
Yeah, that's a gigantic game. I'm glad you reminded that. Ben Davis taking on IMG Academy, which that is a massive game, man. IMG is, like I said yesterday, they're a behemoth. They're a factory. They're a sports factory. Montverde. These are academies that bring in the best of the best, not just for sports. Like Montverde, they're international and all kinds of things, music, art, yada, yada. But they're bringing in the best. But when it comes to sports, they don't have just anybody playing. It ain't Johnny Joe who walked off the street, who lives in their area. These guys are coming from all over. So I could see Center Grove scheduling that game because of their conference woes, but what the hell? Although after what they did to Pike, maybe not so much. They beat them 62-0 after leading 48-0 at halftime. Their quarterback, Thomas Gatkowski, was 12 of 17 for 285 yards and 5 touchdowns. Mike Zachary caught 2 passes for 93 yards and 2 touchdowns. This week, though, the Giants host IMG Academy, who is 2-0 and ranked 4th in the country. Hello. So, yeah, that's going to be a game that I know Kyle will be at. Brownsburg still playing well and undefeated. They beat Franklin Central over the weekend. Fisher still undefeated after a win over Noblesville. Westfield still undefeated. So the top 6 teams might save Center Grove. The number 1 team are all undefeated. Fisher's 3-0. Westfield goes to 3-0. Kyle Neddenriep joining us from the Indy Star now. Kyle, talking about the 6A play, big win by Center Grove. Of course, going down to Trinity and just really shellacking a team that's won the most state titles in that state. But 6A period is looking like this is just going to be a fist fight between all these teams, man. Ben Davis is hosting IMG. What the hell? That's like taking on Indiana.
Yeah, I'm actually going out there today to talk to those guys about that a little bit and see what kind of see what the thought is. No, not the thought of playing that game, but just the thought of going into that. What kind of your expectations are? It's going to be a tall task. Obviously, Ben Davis ranked number 1 in 6A, but this is sort of a different animal that they're taking on. So, I don't know what to expect. It'd be somewhat interesting. I don't know.
How does that come to be? Ben Davis does not have problems scheduling games, and they play a tough schedule. So it's like saying, this is not tough enough. Let's go play the Rams, the LA Rams. I could see that with Center Grove because of their conference woes and whatnot. Scheduling, of course, they schedule like a madman as well. But wow, if I was a football coach, if he scheduled the game, I would be saying, what the hell are you doing? Or if my AD scheduled it, I'd say, what, are you trying to get me fired?
Well, I joked with Jason Simmons because he was the coach who left Ben Davis to go to Miami of Ohio as running backs coach. And it was sort of right after this game was scheduled that he left. Had nothing to do with one, had nothing to do with the other, but, kind of funny, the timing of it. But yeah, it's the part to me, it's unfortunate. The game that went off the schedule was actually Center Grove. We would have seen Center Grove, Ben Davis play each other. This is sort of a 1-year thing with IMG, and it's sort of an opportunity that didn't used to present itself because of the boundary 250-mile radius thing where you couldn't bring in a team from Florida. They couldn't have played this game previously. The IHSA restricted those rules so you could actually bring a team in. You can't go out and play IMG down in Florida, but you can bring him in now. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, I'd rather see Center Grove Ben Davis, to be honest with you. I mean, it's just, I don't know. All these out-of-state games, I just don't care about them. This one's a little different because it's it's a national team. It's sort of a measuring stick type of game, but I don't know. I mean, I'd much rather see the Center Grove Ben Davis game or the Warren Center Grove game or Carmel's, whatever, than all these out-of-state games. I just don't. There's no frame of reference. No one knows who these teams are, and who cares? I mean, I don't know. I don't understand it.
Well, Five Lefts wants to know about Fishers and Hamilton Southeastern. What are your thoughts on that one?
Should be a great game. I mean, I'm going to be at that game, actually, the Mudsock game, and that's after watching Fishers last week beat Noblesville. I think they've got the skill position guys. John Anthony Hall at receiver is a big time athlete. They've got a few guys. Noah McPeak had a really good game against Noblesville. This game was close last year anyway. Went to overtime in the regular season. Then HSC kind of smacked Fishers in the sectional, but I think Fishers has something here. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to win. I'm actually going to pick HSC to win, probably by a field goal or so. But I think talent-wise, skill position-wise, I mean, I think Fishers is a better matchup this year than they were last year. And it's going to be, and it's always a great atmosphere, the best probably of the season anywhere. This is going to be absolutely unbelievable crowd. I mean, I bet there's 8,000 people at that game. Anyone who can fit into that stadium is going to be there Friday night. So it'll be phenomenal. I mean, I think the game will match the crowd and the atmosphere. It's going to be a lot of fun Friday night out there.
Who are the guys that stand out? Who are the Division I prospects that are available in this game?
On HSC side, you got Styles Prescott, who's going to Notre Dame, offensive lineman. You've got Jalen Alexander, their running back's going to Ball State. He's a guy I think could get some bigger offers. Kobe Martin, the running back for Fishers, is going to Miami of Ohio, but Indiana was out watching him Friday night against Noblesville, and I think potentially could offer him. So he's definitely one to watch. DJ Hamilton, the receiver for HSC, is a Division I guy. I don't know if he's going to get those Big Ten. The only question on him is flat out speed at receiver. Like, I think that's what's holding him back from getting a Big Ten offer. I guess John Anthony Hall for Fisher is another guy who's a Division I guy. I mean, there's several. Brady Wolf from Fisher's going to Ball State, defensive end. So you've got several on both sides. So it's interesting. I think the quarterback play too, and then those guys aren't Division I recruits at this point. But Bennett Gorak for Fisher's played really well against Noblesville. 23 for 27 passing everything was on the money. And then Chandler Weston for HSC's a junior. Kind of more of a dual threat guy, but he's played well so far too. So there's a lot of matchups that they kind of equal each other out a lot of, on both sides. And then the, kind of the emotion of the game too. All these players, of course, know each other, grown up playing together in a lot of cases. So, and Mason Alexander, I didn't mention him. Mason Alexander from HSC, defensive back, had 2 pick sixes in the season opener. He has offers from like Auburn and he's got big time, offers out there. I don't have his list in front of me, but he's got a lot of Missouri, schools that are outside even the Big Ten footprint. So, or whatever that footprint. I don't know if you can go outside the Big Ten footprint anymore, but you get my drift.
Absolutely. SEC schools, that's a big time. Just adding the 6A class for Indiana, as you look through it, it seems like it has really separated that group, and it seems like it's made football in the state of Indiana a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, it's a battle. I love covering. So, this is so many really good teams. I mean, our area, as you see, the top 10 there. I mean, it's pretty much all Central Indiana, and all those teams kind of battling each other and jockeying with each other all season. Now, and like I said earlier, I mean, it's why are some of those teams not playing each? I mean, at some point we'll go back to, those teams playing each other. I think all the time, but yeah, I mean, it's and normally it kind of switches hands every year until Center Grove kind of got this stranglehold on it. it's really changed hands a lot. It'll be, Warren one year, Ben Davis the next. It just kind of goes around in Center Grove, Carmel. Those are mainly been the schools that have won it. Westfield's cracked in there, hasn't won it yet, but they've made it. I think this year maybe HSE and Fisher, one of those Fisher's HSE could get there potentially. Carroll did it last year from that north side, but you've got some really good teams. I think it's kind of evened out. It used to be the south half of that 6A bracket was very dominant. Now you've got these schools like Fisher's and HSE getting better, and some of those Fort Wayne schools too. I think Carroll will continue to be a really strong program out of Fort Wayne for the next few years at least. And I know they're building up there, and that school is only going to get stronger, I think, as time goes on in football. So, yeah, I mean, it's fun. I mean, it would probably be good for the sport or the class if someone would beat Center Grove at some point and in their dominance and but not good for Center Grove necessarily, but just to kind of get that thing in someone else's hands. But we'll see. I mean, Center Grove's not going to give that up easily, as we've seen. They've got a team this year, I think, that could possibly win it again. So it'll be fun to see how it all shakes out. It's quite a ways off still till we'll find all that out, but the fun part of the season is finding out who's maybe legit and who's not.
What are you expecting from the Ben Davis IMG game?
I don't know. I mean, I think, the guys, Ben Davis has guys who could play on that team, like Mark Zachary, who's, he's another guy, Georgia, Notre Dame. I mean, he's got Ohio State offer. He's the type of guy who could switch uniforms and you wouldn't know, the difference. I think he could play for IMG. I shouldn't say that. Ben Davis, that might, he's not going anywhere, but he's a Ben Davis guy through and through. But yeah, I mean, IMG is just such a, you go up and down the roster and it's like, man, they've just got so many Division I players. I don't know how Ben Davis can beat them, but on the other side though, it's like, like Mark Zachary, they've got a quarterback, Thomas Gatkowski, who's, he's not going to SEC, but Miami of Ohio is not that's nothing to sneeze at. He's a D1 guy. Elijah Price, the running back, I think he'll end up being a college running back. I don't know what level, but he's a player, so Ben Davis is never short on talent, and they also have experience on this team. So, and they've started off really well. So and they handled Moeller in the opener easily. So I don't put it out. I would love to see it, to be honest with you. I mean, I'd love to see Ben Davis beat IMG, and that, that could wave the flag for Indiana high school football, certainly. But is that realistic? I don't even know. I mean, it doesn't seem like that's really fair footing, I would say. It's public school against a school it's a prep academy that's just, brings in all kinds of talent. So, I don't know. I give Ben Davis credit for even playing it, I guess. Even though I'd rather see Center Grove Ben Davis this week, I mean, you give him credit for taking on the challenge. I mean, certainly. So, and I hope they win. It's one time I can have a rooting interest is in this type of game. So I'm definitely going for hoping they can pull it off.
Absolutely. Well, make sure you give Kyle a follow if you're not already for complete coverage on all of the high school athletics in the state of Indiana. Kyle, thank you very much, brother. Appreciate you.
You bet. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Cal Neddenriep from the Indy Star joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We've got more coming up, brought to you by the Rusty Catered Fork and Ale down in Bloomington, part of the Wow Food Group. Up next, the Hall of Famer Rick Bozich joins us. Stay tuned. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Hey, Rick, sorry to keep you waiting. You may have missed my text. I told you we were running 10 minutes.
Yeah, I did. I took my dog to the vet this morning, so I didn't check my phone. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I tried to send a private message on here too, but you may not have seen that too. I don't do that very often.
I just saw it now, but that's okay. I was reading my email.
Okay. Sorry to keep you waiting.
No problem.
How's everything else going?
Good. Been good. The Hoosiers.
I have complete doubts in Walt Bell
Right.
I think
I don't
we're being
know,
a little too hard. Don't be too harsh. I think, and not that you're trying to be harsh. I don't think you are. But I
I'm
mean,
not trying to be harsh. It was his
think the
plan. It was his
quarterbacks are
game
just-
plan. It was his BS.
And they played Ohio State. I know you think that it shows more about Ohio State than it does Indiana, but
I'm not. That has nothing to do with basically not trying. Why are you running Jalen Lucas up the middle? Why are you not throwing slant passes? Why are you not rolling your quarterback out and throwing 7-yard outs? I can go on and on and on things.
I think their main thing was they were just trying to shorten the game. I think that's why you didn't see as much throwing.
Well, the NCAA did that for them by changing the rules on the first down, so they don't have to worry about that.
Well, that doesn't help a lot, but
I'm just.
Which quarterback looked better?
I thought
Sorsby.
personally, I thought Sorsby did, but you know,
we're still like the opening. So Sorsby started, obviously. He didn't look good on his opening couple of drives. Taven came in. I thought he looked better than Sorsby did on his first couple of drives, but then Sorsby came back in and looked better than Taven did on his first few drives. So it's kind of a progression.
I think Sorsby looked better as he got more comfortable. I think, and I still say he's going to end up being the starter. I think that's
going to start this week. Is that right?
Yeah.
And they're
play
both
the first
split time again.
Yeah, whatever that means. You play the first quarter, and the other one plays the second quarter. It's not exactly like that, but pretty much.
Did Indiana State get blown out their first game?
Got zipped
27-0. I'm pretty sure
by Eastern Illinois. Illinois.
So
that means Indiana needs to shut out Indiana State and put up probably 40 points at least.
Didn't the defense play well against Ohio State?
Yeah, they did. They played really well.
They looked like they had players. Like they looked like they had guys with speed that could hit.
The guys up front are good. The guys in the middle are good. The secondary obviously played well enough against the most vaunted
guys
passing attack in the whatever.
Here we go.
A part of the Wild Food Group is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
How's it going? Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday, September 2nd. Jim Coyle with you as always, joined now by Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. Make sure you're giving him a follow for coverage on all things, whether it's Indiana, Louisville, Kentucky. He's got it all, baby. Man, college football was fun over the weekend. You went to Atlanta to watch Louisville. That was probably a little closer than Louisville expected it to be. And they didn't cover, man. They cost me in my picks.
Hey, at halftime, didn't look like they were going to win. I mean, they had a slow start offensively, a couple trips in the red zone that only resulted in field goals. And then defensively in the second quarter, Georgia Tech went crazy. They scored 28 points and had 282 yards, and they were 28-13. And then they came out and dominated the second half. I thought Jeff Brom and his staff did a really good job of making adjustments, changing up several different things on defense, the way they lined up in front, getting the play calls in faster, being more aggressive. Offensively, I still didn't think they played a great game. Plummer had an okay game. But he got better as the game went on and threw a couple of clutch touchdown passes in the fourth quarter. They got 3 different running backs that ran decently, and they play Murray State at home tomorrow night in their home opener, so they'll be 2-0 when they come up to Indianapolis next week.
So that's going to be interesting to watch. Of course, Purdue, we saw them as well. They not only did not play well, we talked to Dylan Sinn a little bit ago from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. They looked not good as well. So I don't see their season is not getting off well. Indiana's didn't expect them to win, but and it's getting tired of talking about it at this point. But the offense was so I don't even know what word to use for it. Remedial is the best thing that I could come up with. And I just have no idea what the thinking going in was. I really don't. I don't want to hear about protecting quarterbacks because there are 1,000 different things they could have done that still protected the quarterback. And I can't believe they had all that time to implement some things, and that's the best that they could do. I don't expect them to show everything against Ohio State, but man, student body right, student body left. That's a little bit more than that. The option, they ran that little option, which was cute. But I'm really, it's not a good start, in my opinion, offensively for Indiana, because it kind of is a carryover what we saw last year, a lack of ingenuity and imagination.
Yeah, I guess what I'd say is this. It's year 7 or year 8. I'm not sure which one it is for Tom Allen. 7. Okay. And I know you played Ohio State, but you rank last in the country in total offense. Not acceptable. You got to have a niche. You're going to be either a team that, plays hurry up, or you're going to be a team that plays air raid, or you're going to be a team that has a wildcat quarterback, or you have to have an identity of what you're going to be. And I agree with you. There's no way to tell what the identity is in this game that they've played the last couple of years of, we're not going to say who the quarterback is. It's meaningless. You walk away from that game saying you don't have a quarterback. Nobody's the quarterback yet. And the other thing that I look at is there were so many quarterbacks available in the transfer portal after last season. You got to go out there and get a guy who's proven that he can play quarterback and include him in the mix because you don't have one. And, you only lost you're supposed to lose by 30, you lose by 20 until Indiana moves past that mindset that a 20-point loss is okay. They're never going to get better. And that's the way it has to be. That's what I think.
I agree. I really do. The biggest thing is, and Tom Allen's a great guy, a great defensive mind. He has no offensive identity because he is not an offensive person. That has not been his shtick. His deal is defense, but that's not allowable either. You have to develop that somewhere along the way, and it hasn't. It has changed between whomever the offensive coordinator has been. And
it's hard to look at Michael Penix and say, wow, that dude was here. And he threw for 450 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no picks. And he's gone somewhere else to play. And
one of the top picks to win the Heisman right now.
Right. It's hard to process. And, I'll also say this, when Kevin Wilson was there, they could score points. Now they won 5, 6, 7 games or whatever it was, but they were entertaining and they scored points. They had Tevin Coleman and they had, the quarterbacks that could throw the ball. And, they've never really had great offense and defense on a sustained basis, which is why they've struggled for so many years. But, it looks like the defense this year is going to be able to keep them in a number of games. If you can hold Ohio State to 23 points, you can hold down those receivers the way they did, that they deserve credit for that. But offensively, man, this is the way it's been now for 2 or 3 years in a row of offensive line, okay, running game, okay, receivers, okay, quarterback play since Penix left, not okay. And it's got to be better. It really does.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly because especially now we look at the growth of what's coming next year in the Big Ten. You're looking at just dropping further behind now. You're not even holding serve because you've got 4 new teams coming in. And are you going to be chum for everybody? That's a decision Indiana has to make. They're either going to be chum or they're going to be one of the predators. I'm not talking about being Ohio State and all of that, but you've got to get yourself up in the mix. And I think that's easily doable because it's happening. Do I need to say anything more than the word Deion Sanders?
Yeah, look in the Big Ten. Why can't Indiana be what Minnesota is? Why can't Indiana be what Wisconsin has been? Wisconsin, I remember when they used to be terrible in football, and Barry Alvarez came in and changed it, and it's remained changed. Maryland has gotten better now in the last few years. I mean, pressure has to be applied by the athletic administration and by the fan base on the football program to be better. And the university has to make a commitment of saying, the status quo is the game is changing in college athletics. You can't just to go through the motions in football and say all we care about is basketball, all we care about is soccer, swimming, or whatever. You have to make a better commitment to football. You do. I mean, it has to come from the board of trustees and the president on down. I mean, if you're going to remain in the Big Ten, I mean, I don't think it's outrageous to say at some point as these conference realignment things keep going that they're going to look at some of the weak sisters in some of these leagues and say, we can do better than this.
Well, I mean, a lot of people have asked that, and I've always said that that's not possible for Indiana to get booted. They're one. Well, I guess anything's possible, but at least they have the strength of men's and women's basketball, soccer. So they have some other big time things, but football is the engine that drives the train. And you don't have to be winning national championships, but I think you just have to be competitive, just for the sake of being competitive. And they don't need you if not, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and next week's a big game, I think, for Indiana. You're playing in your home state against a team that in a program that is very committed to being good and went out and they proved it several times. They paid off Bobby Petrino $14 million to bring another coach in. When Satterfield didn't do well, the fan base let it be known they weren't happy with Satterfield. He felt it and decided to leave to Cincinnati, and they pretty much demanded they want Jeff Brom. They got Jeff Brom. I know he's a hometown guy, to leave a Big Ten program to come here. The will and the interest in having a good football program is here at Louisville. It is. And Howard Schnellenberger changed it. They built that new stadium. They've added on to the stadium twice. They are aggressive and they are ambitious. And Indiana hasn't been. And this really took place in the 70s and 80s and the 90s, where they just kind of went through the motions in football. And they're way behind in terms of what they demand from the football program. And until it changes, until fans demand that it changes, and until the administration demand that it changes, it's going to remain the way it is. And that's what I think. And the reason Louisville is important next week is you're playing against a first-year coach who's rebuilding his program, and he was even better than Indiana was in the transfer portal, and brought a bunch of guys in there. And they're going to come up there with, Brom, and Mark Hagan talked to us the other day, former IU player, former IU assistant coach. Those dudes are going to be recruiting players out of Indiana to come play at Louisville instead of playing at Indiana. So you have to match their intensity.
Yeah, and it's another problem. Indiana has not been able to get the leading players out of their own state.
Right.
And they have to bring in the transfers, which is fine in this day and age. It doesn't really matter where you get them from, but it just says something about the program, because if you're not getting the players within your state, that means the interest is waned. That means you don't have the fan base, which is obvious. Indiana does not. Last week was hot, but again, you see, boom, the walkouts at halftime of a 10-3 game against the number 3 team in the country. So it's just that's, as Don Fischer said, it's a IU football tradition, and that's a sad tradition because it's not going to change. And they sent out the recent poll for survey for the stadium. The one thing they should have put on there is winning. Winning will change everything. Winning
You're right.
cures
winning
all.
An entertaining product. Yeah. I mean, fans need a return on their investment. A lot of people drive an hour, 2 hours, or whatever to come down there, and they want to be rewarded by watching people win, watching their team win. And they need to win impressively this week. They need to win impressively to get people excited, and then they need to get a crowd turnout and play well against Louisville. And then you got Akron. Louisville's might be the most important game on Indiana's schedule.
I've said it all season.
If they can win that game, they can get yeah, they can win that game. They get to 3-1, and then they only have to win 3 conference games to get bowl eligible. But even that's part of the thinking, though. In Indiana, the thinking always is just get bowl eligible. It's like,
yes,
if you need to set your sights higher than that.
That's a win, baby. Getting bowl eligible. That's a win. Getting bowl eligible. Yeah. Oh yeah. But I've long said this season, the Louisville game, linchpin. You don't win that game, it's over for Indiana as far as any bowl hopes, in my opinion. Just like Purdue has a linchpin game coming up. There are just linchpin games that if you don't win those, you're not going to win the Big Ten, especially when you have Indiana still has Penn State and Michigan coming up on the schedule, as well as a few others that are going to be tough. So,
and they don't get Northwestern this year, when Northwestern could be the team you want to play.
Exactly. So hopefully they'll go. What's it going to take for Indiana to make that change? I don't know. We'll talk more about that in the next segment coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com with us, back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. You was a little early there, weren't you, Johnny?
No, I just felt like you were at a transition point.
Actually, you're right. I was. Good time. Good times. What's up next for you, Ricky? Where are you going?
Louisville tomorrow night against Murray State.
So Louisville has a Thursday game. Indiana has a Friday game.
Correct.
Holy crap.
Which I'm happy about because I get my weekend to myself. I don't have to worry about watching either one of them.
Louisville plays Murray State.
Oh, okay.
Which is better than Indiana State.
What did Murray do in week 1? I didn't see their score.
They beat Presbyterian 41-10 or something. I don't. Is Eastern Illinois any good?
I think they've been decent in the past. I don't think they're world beaters in the FCS, but I think they've been okay.
Okay.
Either way, if an FCS team is shutting you out and you're playing an FBS opponent, you need to do close to the same if you're Indiana.
Right. What year was it? Didn't Indiana State have like a couple players killed in a car crash? Was that last season or remember that?
That sounds familiar. Let me see.
And they're still coached by Mallory, right?
Yeah, Kurt Mallory. Let's see. This happened in... Where's the date on this? Yeah, it was last year.
Before the season or after the season?
It looks like it was the end of August, right before the season.
Okay, right before the season.
Yep, it was an 18 and 19-year-old.
Right. Too bad. I'm trying to look at what did they announce the crowd Saturday at the IU game?
Oh, it should have been. I mean, if it wasn't sold out, it was damn close at one point. It looked pretty full. I mean, but it was quick. You had to catch it quick because the funny thing is, it took until the end of the first quarter, I think, to completely fill in, and then the second quarter, into the second quarter, it emptied back out.
The Eastern Illinois team that beat Indiana State went 2-9 last year.
Oh my gosh! So yeah, Indiana needs to beat them down. All right, here we go.
Yeah,
10 seconds.
They need to win this game impressively.
Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Metalworks Brewing Company. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday. Coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Brought to you by Metalworks Brewing Company, a part of the Wow Food Group. Served at all the Wow Food Group locations. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com with us right now. Rick, the Big 12 not looking great, or didn't have a great start. The ACC up minus Clemson, surprisingly. The Pac-12, their last year, kind of a good start for them. But you can't start anywhere other than Colorado and TCU, man. I wonder what the ratings for that game were. They had to continue to climb and climb and climb because that was a climactic game of epic proportions.
Yeah, and he had it on. Eric Crawford had it on the back seat in his iPad as we were driving back from Atlanta Saturday, and we couldn't believe the score. And, we stuck with it all the way because it was such an entertaining game. And Deion's son, Shador, played a phenomenal game. And now he's in the Heisman race. And they play Nebraska this week on Fox at noon. That'll draw big numbers and big ratings. And, Deion's sent a message across the country of different way of doing things. They're the dude that played both ways, right? Didn't he play every snap, Hunter? So
it had it first time in a century. He had 10 plus receptions or 10 or more receptions and an interception in the game.
Right. It's sending a message to teams. I mean, Colorado might have been worse than Indiana last year, right? I mean, you could make
they were 1-11. They were 1-11. I'm going to go, yeah.
Yeah. And, I doubt Deion stays around forever because if he keeps doing this, he'll get a better opportunity for next season. But I don't think
but he's not leaving until his sons leave, I would imagine.
That's true. But every school in the country can't do it this way, but it does provide a blueprint to saying if you really want to try and think outside the box and do something different, you'll have success. Now he's got to sustain it week by week. People will be watching him to see how they continue to go in the league. I think the other big story from the weekend was a little bit of a flop by the SEC. And for once, some of their teams played Power 5 opponents away from home and found out that you're not going to win. Florida, that's a first road game Florida has played non-conference against a Power 5 opponent outside the state of Florida in over 30 years. How about that? And they got popped.
By a team playing their second and third string quarterback.
Correct. South Carolina, that game was in Charlotte. Wouldn't really call it a neutral site, but it wasn't like a North Carolina home game. They got beat by 2 touchdowns. And LSU plays Florida State in Orlando. Obviously more Florida State territory, but they got popped pretty good. Those 3 SEC teams lost by a combined score of 100-52. So it's interesting. Scheduling does matter early on in the year, and we'll see. And as you mentioned, Duke beating Clemson the way they did, that was no fluke. Duke looked like really good players. They had really good players on defense. They had speed. They were aggressive. They had veteran dudes. The quarterback is a former basketball player or something who just started playing football, or I don't know. He wanted to play college basketball, I think it was. So you can find dudes, and if Duke can do it and Colorado can do it, I would think Bloomington could do it.
Not to mention, isn't Duke's offensive coordinator Kevin Johns, former Indiana offensive coordinator Kevin Johns?
Is it really? I don't know. I know their head coach is Elko. They used to be at Notre Dame and Texas A&M.
I did not realize that either, John. I did not
know
that
that
was there.
I'll confirm with that with you in just a second.
You're probably right. Who was he?
Kevin Johns. That would be Kevin Wilson, right?
Oh, okay. I don't remember.
He was with Kevin Wilson. He was one of Kevin Wilson's OCs.
Okay. Yeah, I remember the other guy. Seth Luttrell's the guy I remember.
But so where were we? What were we talking about? We got confused.
Duke, Carolina, getting it done.
Oh yeah. The ACC. While Clemson they didn't look as bad as it looked. How it turned out for them. They just made some incredibly bad mistakes. Right. But other than that, they played okay. They just made some unbelievably
wild mistakes. You choose to Duke. I don't care. If you're Clemson, you got top 10 recruiting class year after year after year, that something's not going. And this is the second year Clemson has misfired a little bit, and they're not out of it yet. You can come back from one loss early in the year, but now you've got no margin for error, because if you lose again, and they got to play Florida State, I think, on the 23rd. It is in Death Valley, so that'll be a big. That's going to be a must win for them, because if they lose twice in the league, then you're in a hard time. You got to get in the ACC championship game to have any chance at all of making the playoff.
The new AP football poll out. Ohio State drops only 2 spots after the Indiana game, which I'm shocked. I'm like, okay, I see no reason in the world, and John brought this up earlier, and I've said it before, and I agree, there should just not be any preseason poll. There should not be a poll until teams play somebody.
Right.
Because especially now, because these teams, look at Colorado. They are not the team they were last year, so you can't look at them that way. So these preseason polls and the current poll system is junk to me.
Yeah, I agree. Should wait at least a month. That's why the playoff committee waits as long as it does, until you have some data to look at, some comparative scores to look at. But the AP poll's always been this way. It's a topic of conversation. People look for it on Sunday or Monday and digest it and complain about it and measure each other. And the computer rankings are already out there every week, so it's not going to change.
Right now, the Big Ten East with 3 teams in the top 7.
That's the way it usually is. It'll be interesting. Michigan doesn't play anybody, I know, in the non-conference. Penn State, I would imagine West Virginia was their only legitimate non-conference team, but Ohio State still has to go to Notre Dame, which I also think is the weekend of the 23rd. I think that's Florida State, Clemson, and Ohio State at Notre Dame is the same weekend, I'm pretty sure.
And speaking of Notre Dame, they've got a 3-week stretch in which they play Ohio State at home, then travel to Durham to take on that Duke team, and then they go back to take on USC.
And then they play Louisville. They play at NC State this weekend. I mean, NC State's not great. They struggled to beat Connecticut last weekend, but it's still a road game, so it'll be interesting to see how the Irish play down in Raleigh.
They're a team that I'm like, okay, I don't have a problem with them. They're 2-0, ranked 10th. They'll get a test this week, but anybody that you've really, of the teams that you've seen, who's really disappointed the most?
Florida was very disappointing. Second year, and that guy's going to be on the hot seat. They were bad last year, and they're bad this year, and their former quarterback is now at Cincinnati and playing for Satterfield, and he had a big game, Emory Jones. So I'd say Florida is disappointing at this point. Obviously, Northwestern was embarrassingly bad against Rutgers, which you kind of expect considering everything that's gone on up there. I'd say those would be the top 2 at this point. Nebraska didn't. I mean, they brought in the big NFL superstar coach. They didn't look that great, obviously, at Minnesota.
And they play Colorado this week. I'm like, what's the spread on that game going to be? 75? Seriously.
It's
John,
still
you already have it?
3.5, I believe. It was 3.5 yesterday.
I'm not a big better. How do you not bet Colorado over Nebraska by 3.5 points?
It's actually gone to 3, and more so in favor of Nebraska. It's still favor of Colorado to win the game, but it's gone.
Is there something I'm not aware of? Did Deion Sanders take his sons and go to Maui for the next 3 weeks? I mean, how in the world?
Yeah, I mean, part of it, people want to see proof more than just one game, and people also need to. A lot of teams bounce after a big performance like that. Everybody's telling those guys at Colorado how great they are. They're the talk of the nation. They're probably doing a bunch of national interviews and stuff. The focus might be a little bit off this week. We'll see.
I don't know. Do you think Deion is? He knows how many eyes are looking at him. I think he knows what he did last week. Yeah. But he knows that this week that there's probably going to be many more eyes on him because the people didn't believe last week.
Yeah, but it's human nature now. I don't know how many weeks you can keep playing the people nobody believes in you card and have people keep responding to it. At some point, you just have to perform. So I don't know. I think that line is a little low. Colorado was so bad last year. I think it takes people a while to have they need more proof to really buy into how good Colorado really is. And TCU is not the team they were last year. They lost their quarterback. They lost a bunch of players. Their offensive coordinator's gone. I mean, that's people associate them with the team that played for the national championship last year, but it's a much different team.
Yeah, but if they can, if Colorado can put up 45 on that TCU team on the road, I'm thinking 60 at Nebraska, man.
You're all in on the Buffs.
Well, I am against Nebraska. That's for daggone sure, because I saw what they did. A little disappointing start for the Matt Rule era at Nebraska. They lose a tough one, which was the mantra of their entire season last year.
Yeah, I mean, you bring in take. I tell you, another team that was disappointing was Baylor. Baylor got beat at home by Texas State. They're one of the big buffers of the first weekend. So, it happens. It happens, and we'll have more this. I haven't looked at the card completely this weekend to see what really big name games are, other than Nebraska, Colorado. But that's one that I will be watching, because Kentucky's got Eastern Kentucky, which got routed by Cincinnati. So, not really a great game there either.
What is all up on your sports schedule for the next 3 days? Because this 3-day weekend that we had last weekend offers the short week, but a lot of sports. Louisville playing on Thursday football against Murray State. You've got Indiana taking on Indiana State on Friday. So we've got the games that are starting tomorrow.
Right. I'll be going to the Louisville game. I'll watch the IU game. I'm sure I'll watch a bunch of college football on Saturday, and then next week, get ready for the Louisville IU game, and plus Louisville's volleyball team, which is ranked second in the country, is playing Stanford and I think Kentucky here in town in the basketball arena downtown. They're hoping to draw back a couple of crowds of close to 20,000 for ball. So
they're not gonna do it in the old in the L&N the stadium.
They're playing a couple matches this week in the L&N, but they're moving down in the basketball arena to play Stanford and Kentucky next week, and I'm sure they will draw close.
The White Sox, of course. At least the Reds hanging in for a wild card spot, man.
They had a big comeback win last night, right?
Yeah, and they're playing the Mariners. I mean, right now the Mariners versus the Reds, I believe, coming up. Is that right?
I don't know. I know they beat the Mariners today. Maybe they lost last night. I don't know. I know the White Sox, since they named their new general manager, are 0-5, and they blew a 6-0 lead to the Royals yesterday and lost 7-6 on a balk on the last play of the game. So the season can't end soon enough. The White Sox are a total disaster.
They should have named Rick Bozich as GM.
They should have. See? Yeah.
I mean, what did they have to lose? Seriously, they keep hiring people that they think go outside the box.
It's a clown show.
What are the mistakes that they're making?
I mean, they're terrible in terms of player development. They've given out tracks to guys who are considered decent prospects who aren't worth the money. They've had a bunch of injuries. They got no pitching. They traded away most of their best pitchers. It's a complete system failure.
Well, that won't do things well. How was the Waze trip, by the way? I was thought last week when Rick was going down to Atlanta, Waze took them off of the interstate.
Yeah, we got off at exit 53, which is Cave City, Glasgow, to get gas, and it was time to resume the trip, and it advised us not to get on I-65, so we took back roads from southern Kentucky all the way through Tennessee till we got to Chattanooga. I mean, we avoided any big traffic jams, but it was 2-lane roads part of the way and windy, hilly roads. You had to have total faith in Waze that it knew what it was doing. And then after we got on in Chattanooga, we made it. So on the way home, though, we stayed on the interstate. So either way, it took us 7 hours going down, 7 hours coming back.
I guess it knew what it was doing, man. They usually do.
They do. I think they funneled some people. Nashville traffic is so bad that I think they funnel X% of people off the interstate in Nashville to help alleviate some of that. And even Saturday when we were coming home, it was backed up in downtown Nashville. So I don't know. Atlanta traffic and Nashville traffic, either one's very good.
Before you joined us, we was talking to Cal Neddenriep, Ben Davis High School this week, playing IMG Academy in football. And I'm like, why in the hell would anybody schedule that game as a regular high school?
Where's the game?
It's at Ben Davis, I believe, at least. I think it would almost have to be been those academies, man. They got money. They just got IMG was sold for what, $1 billion. So they have money. But yeah, that's a
IMG. It's nice. That's the place that started as the tennis, Nick Bollettieri's tennis academy, and it's built up now to all different sports.
That's right the same with Montverde. Not only are they sports, it's arts, it's music, it's they're an international consortium of everything.
Now, isn't this the big weekend for Indiana basketball recruiting where McNeely and
True, Queen yes, the Montverde Trio. Speaking of Montverde, the Montverde Trio, as I call them, I don't know if they sing, but the Montverde Trio coming in, Liam McNeely, who is
Derek Queen
and their teammate, I'm drawing a blank
Gibbons,
right now.
Is that his name?
Yeah, yes. But Liam McNeely is Indiana has been considered to be in the driver's seat, but we all know that doesn't mean squat. Everyone thought that Badunga was going to Duke, and he ends up at Kansas. I mean, things change all the time. So, but yeah, he will be in town along with Derek Queen, who teammate Malik released Derek's former teammate Malik Renew on the Indiana team. He never played with McNeely, but I'm sure that they have spoken and talked quite a bit. But that pipeline is extraordinarily important for Indiana to keep going.
Yeah, and they need to get a commitment. They really haven't got a commitment in 2 years, other than Renew and Mbako, who were guys who decommitted elsewhere. I think the last commitment they got was either Cups or Ja'Kai Newton of a high school player. So they're due to get a commitment, and seems like they're all in on these, especially Queen and McNeely and Boogie Fland, I guess it is. So we'll see how that turns out. And wasn't it last weekend, Romeo and a bunch of guys? They
were all in town. Trace Jackson Davis,
Trace Thompson, Rob Fissy, all those dudes. So yeah, it's nice to see Romeo come back to Bloomington.
Yeah, it was a little surprising to see him here. But they had all those guys back. Surprising. Well, that was a big game, but this weekend I wonder what they'll do for this. They're obviously pulling out all the stops for these recruiting visits, but this weekend is a gigantic one. No commitments right now for the 2024 class.
Right.
I'm just guessing McNeely is going to be the first one, and once he commits, I'm not sure if that's what will kind of open up the system, or if it's simply that we're in an age where guys, because of NIL, and they're waiting as long as they can because offers keep coming, man. So they're waiting a little longer, whereas before most of them wanted to get it out of the way before their senior season started. That's not always the case now.
Yeah, I mean, didn't he announce though last week he's going to take a visit to Kansas? So I don't think this is going to end anytime soon. They can't sign anyway until November, so there's probably going to be another couple months for we really have a bunch of answers.
And anytime you get Kansas involved, you better pay attention, because I do not think that there is a program in the country right now that is recruiting and using NIL better than Kansas, along with their success.
Right. I mean, obviously, you mentioned the kid they got from Kokomo, Flory Badunga, and I guess it's 1-1 because Indiana got Mbako last year when Kansas thought they had him. So when you're going head-to-head with Kansas, you're not going to win them all. You just need to win a few.
Absolutely. You're going to be covering the Louisville game and Indiana games, of course, this weekend, one in person, one on TV. So, and then you're going to get to relax over the weekend?
I'm sure I'll just watch football. Yeah, Saturday I'll just try and watch a collection of games, kind of get a feel for some other teams and the future teams on Louisville's schedule, future teams on IU and Kentucky's schedule, and get a better feel for the national picture.
We'll certainly look forward to it. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. Make sure you're giving him a follow. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you, brother.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Talk to you next week.
Have a good one. Absolutely. The Hall of Famer Rick Bozich joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Man, I cannot thank everybody enough today. Another great fun show with Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers, Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star, and of course, we just finished up with the Hall of Famer Rick Bozich there from WDRB.com. Plenty coming up tomorrow, John Boy. What's on the docket?
That's right. We will have Mike DeCourcy with us tomorrow, making up for not being able to come on with us on Tuesday. We'll also hear from Matt Taylor and Chris Denary, and I do believe Dustin Schutte will be with us tomorrow as well.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, man. I cannot thank everybody enough. Thanks to John, the producer, as well, for keeping us between the white lines. Most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, we've got no reason to be here. And as Jamie said, smash the like button, peeps. We appreciate you. Thank you all so much. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.